I've always been closely attached to music and sound. From a young age, I would always be really fascinated by thunder and really big natural sounds. I remember going to the Melbourne Symphony for the very first time. I think I was 6 years old, and it was amazing. I was literally swept off my feet with excitement and joy. I have no idea what I would be doing if I wasn't an artist, a musician. I like being creative, working with people, being challenged, and never being assured of what's coming next.
Well, Eugene's a first-class percussionist in a country that's blessed with lots of good percussionists, but he has a wonderful standing amongst his peers.
He's constantly on the go. He's one of the busiest people I know, and he's always making links and creating his own work and new projects. He's never sitting around waiting for the phone to ring.
When I first met Elaine, we both had a body of work exploring glass and sound.
13 years ago, I started working with glass, mainly sculpturally in a regular exhibition sense. Then 7 years ago, I found that glass had some exciting sound potential.
She had already over 1,000 individual glass percussion instruments that we could draw upon.
Meeting Eugene has taken the potential of working with glass and sound out of the recording studio and into live performance.
In 2006, Elaine and I set up the Glass Percussion project, and was really about exploring the sound potential of glass. Federation Square have commissioned a major new work by the Glass Percussion project.
This is a really exciting space that we've dubbed the Fracture Galleries. It's very long, it's very high, and it's very narrow. And so that requires a great deal of inventiveness for the artists to actually deal with the space, but it also encourages them to produce something incredibly special and different. The artists are actually going to be performing inside the space between the two walls.
This is the biggest and most ambitious glass percussion project we've done to date. We've applied to 3 government bodies for support. Lighting budget, this is just equipment, right? 4,000? Yep. Without their support, the project has very little chance of surviving. We've got 10 weeks to get this project together. We need to sort through all the glass, get into the recording studio, create a sound installation. I need to write a new composition, rehearse the work, install it in Federation Square, and be ready for opening night. We've got a long road ahead. They're all the same width. Today we're taking all the glass we know we'll be performing with and setting it up as close as we can to how we know it will be in the concert. The stairs there,
Yeah.
and that's a sliding door.
Yeah, so I'm thinking that we'll do a little visual feature both sides of those doorways. There's always a crossover between what I want to do with the fine arts and what he wants to do with the music. So, yeah, sometimes he has to compromise and sometimes I have to compromise. That's a completely different shape altogether.
Yeah, I know.
I
But
think
it would be great for me if we could have it in that order, because it just makes so much more sense. It'd be nice if they looked beautiful the way they're arranged, but it also made sense musically that they were kind of in grouping so that we could play passages easily and also memorise where the notes are.
the quantity of glass instruments that Eugene has access to is probably the first time anyone has had access to that.
Okay, let's have a play. The first step is to become familiar with the instrument groups and to understand how I'll incorporate those into the composition. Matthias Schakarnot is a percussionist who will be performing alongside me in all the performances. The ideas come generally from experimentation. It could be a creative thought, it could be something that happens by accident. When I engage with the instruments, it's actually a dialogue with the instrument. It's actually about understanding what the instrument is asking me to do with it. Okay. At times it worked nicely and other times it was really lame, but I think that's because we need to be really specific about which instruments we use, how we move from each instrument as well.
I thought there were some really effective moments.
Yeah, me too. So it's not about bringing preconceived musical ideas or a specific genre or playing technique to the instrument and then somehow making the instrument fit that. It's really about going there with an open page and exploring how the instrument wants to be played.
Over the weekend, we realised that there's a couple of little things that we could make that would just fill in gaps either musically or visually. So today I'm doing a little bit of everything. It's the last opportunity to blow glass before our performance. Okay, blow. Stop. Oh, okay, go. You made it? How was your thing? Yeah. Actually, Eugene, how do you feel about blowing for me? It's been 12 years now of my relationship with glass, and it says everything that I want it to say. And I think in terms of sound, I couldn't have picked a better, more resonant and probably more surprising medium to work with. The joy of making glass and the performative aspects of what goes on in the studio is as exciting for me as the exhibitions and the final performances. All right.
You know what I just discovered, which I think is kind of nice? Yeah. We could actually use these in this kind of way as like small symbols. As a young child, I would go in to work with Dad in the music store in the city. I started learning drums from my father and I was just turned 6 years old. By the time I was 14, I'd started classical percussion, and a few years later I joined the Australian Youth Orchestra and started touring internationally. Then I entered the VCA and studied classical percussion.
He was probably the strongest student of his generation. He was already possessed of a really good technique, but he was never afraid to push ahead, and he was always out there collaborating with all range of performers and artists.
He's played in quite a lot of orchestral situations, including the Melbourne Symphony, and also a lot of orchestras overseas. Under Pierre Boulez, for example, one of the really great figures of modern contemporary thought in music, and I think that's been a particularly inspiring situation for him.
So we've just had our news about the funding applications, and partly good, partly not so good. Arts Victoria have come through and the City of Melbourne have funded us. but we missed out on the Australia Council, which now means we've got a shortfall of $20,000. That's a huge blow to the budget, and the first thing that's going to go are the artist fees for Elaine and I, and a lot of the work that we were going to outsource, like publicity, we're going to have to do ourselves, and there'll be less rehearsal time and just generally more stress. So the project will go ahead, but unfortunately not in the way we'd hoped. I've come to the recording studio today to see what sound material we can generate from the glass.
Hey, how you doing today?
Good, how are you?
Yeah, good.
There are two reasons why we're recording in the studio. One is to create a backing track for the live performances, and the other is to create a sound installation which accompanies the glass installation. Miles Mumford is one of the most creative sound artists in the country.
Cool, huge. Can we do one that stays in the centre but just goes back and forth just a little bit?
Okay. I feel like the role of Miles and I is like a pair of scientists that are researching the essence or the potential of glass.
Once we put some processing on that, it'll bring out that vibrato, I think.
Right, great. Okay. The task really is to get through all the instruments that will be performed with in the project. The idea is to really put them all down in the recording studio and then find a meaningful way in which to use them. What makes the electroacoustic aspect of this project an essential component is the fact that it allows the human ear to hear things that it normally wouldn't. We're actually able to hear things that are above the audible range of the ear. We can then amplify that and bring it to the perception of the general public. Could we now just take the tracks, overlay them a little bit, and then create like a sort of a 4-minute texture, basically?
Yeah.